Welcome. I am Dr. Tim Harrigan. I want to briefly discuss with you traditional lab work and kind of what we would get at our yearly physical and why this is one of my biggest pet peeves. We go to this yearly physical and they run some very basic labs on us: cholesterol, blood sugar, liver enzymes, things like that. And then they say, oh, you're in normal range. Okay, so we'll talk about normal ranges shortly. It's a very bad indicator to just compare it to normal range versus optimal ranges, which is a smaller portion of that normal range. And that's what we want to constantly strive for. So what happens is we get stuck in this pattern. Let's say I'm 20 years old and I go in for my yearly labs. They check my heart rate, blood pressure, and they do some very basic labs. And they say everything's normal, come back next year. So during that year, I may have some really bad habits. I may be eating too much fast food, have tons of stress, may not be exercising enough. There's just a lot of things in our environment that stress our physiology. And if we don't measure those things in the right way, we don't see it occur. And then let's say I go back at 21, they say you're normal again, come back next year. We're literally just waiting for some of these very small portion of numbers in your body, by the way. When you get those 20 to 30 lab measurements once a year, it's less than 0.1% of what's actually happening in your body. It's a very small window into the body. So at 22, they say I'm normal, come back next year. 23, I could be in this low normal range. Let's say this is normal. So I may be at 51 at 20 years old. And the next year I'm up a little bit. The next year I'm up, I'm up, I'm up. And then I turn 40. And all those 20 years previously, they told me, you're normal, you're healthy, come back next year. I can't tell somebody they're healthy based on measuring 0.1% of their physiology. That doesn't make any sense to me. If we're not looking at certain things that you have to test for and measure, we're not going to see it until it gets really bad. And I'm going to go over more of those explanations shortly as how most things start 10 to 20 years before the diagnosis, before my blood sugar is really high or my cholesterol's high. So at 41 now, maybe, for that 20 years, I'm going slowly up in this normal range. And then I turn 41. And then this is the first time maybe I have two or three measurements that are high. And they say, uh-oh, your cholesterol's high, your blood sugar's high, or whatever else is high now. And it looks like I'm perceiving that as I got sick within a year because I didn't track this trend over 10 to 20 years. Now they're just telling me that my numbers are high when every year before that, they told me you're normal, right? So it didn't happen in a year. This is just now when we're seeing that silent change over time, now creating really high cholesterol or blood sugar or liver enzymes. But there's a lot of things we need to measure before that in that 10 to 20 years of silent progression of this issue or disease. So we don't measure the right things, nor are we comparing to that optimal range, which is a smaller range inside of this normal range that they compare us to. Okay, so let me share some slides here and get into this a little bit more so you understand. All right, if you can see my screen here. So this is probably looks pretty traditional to you guys. This is what most people get at their yearly physical. They get some minerals, some kidney markers, liver, some cholesterol markers, blood sugar. Maybe some people get a little bit more than this, maybe 10 more markers, but it's very limited. This is a lot of end result measurements after years of silent changes in our body. We just weren't comparing to optimal, nor were we measuring enough things in my physiology. There's 37 billion trillion chemical reactions in my body per second. So what are these 20 or 30 things going to tell me about this really complex, incredible human body I have? Doesn't tell us much at all. So this is what most people are used to, this traditional blood work where they compare us to normal. I'm going to talk to you about what's called science-based nutrition. This is what we've been using for over 15 years with people. It's what I use on myself combined with other tests. It's just a much better way to get our yearly labs or even every 6 months so that we can constantly work on nutritional or root cause methods that are going to actually affect some of these changes and keep trying to get me to these optimal ranges, not just in this really broad normal range. And then one day I'm dealing with something maybe bigger. Again, this is what we live and breathe. These are tests I do on myself, kind of my obsession with keeping myself healthy and off medications and out of the doctor's office, trying not to be sick and just optimizing my health. So I'm going to show you one of our superpowers as to how we're able to do that. So benefit one of science-based nutrition testing is being proactive, not reactive, right? When I turned 41 with that example, now I'm reactive. It looks like I've gotten sick within a year, even though it took 10 to 20 years to get to that point. So our traditional model It's great for crisis care. Of course, if I have an emergency, that's where I'm going. They don't know much about prevention or optimization of health, though. So thank God for this system when I have an emergency or I have a crisis type related issue. But they're designed to treat our symptoms, not address the root cause. They offer us drugs and surgeries, really. It's a one size fits all. If you have a thyroid issue, there's two or three medications that essentially do the same thing. Reactive and reductionistic. It emphasizes genetic predispositions, which is not a good thing per se. Your genetics are not death sentences, they're tendencies. So epigenetics is something you want to focus on. I don't care which ones they are. What that discussion always leads to is what environment are you putting those genes into? Right. If I have a prostate cancer gene, that prostate cancer gene is not designed to turn on at 55 years and 2 days old. That's not how they work. It's a tendency. So if I live a life full of stress and poor diet and lack of sleep, I'm going to turn that gene on sooner in my life versus later. But no matter what gene profile you have, we all have bad genes in our body. It always leads back to what am I going to do about it? How am I going to treat my body so I'm less likely to have that tendency occur earlier in my life? It's actually extremely expensive, the traditional model, and financially draining. That's expensive from a lot of different reasons. If I'm tired all the time, I'm on a bunch of prescriptions, I just can't function very well, I'm not sleeping good. It's costly to our whole life, our job, our family, because we're just not feeling good. And so the aligned health model that we teach people is cause, prevention, and performance based lifestyle changes, cellular healing, detoxification. It's customized, it's a blueprint of you versus somebody else. It's proactive. It emphasizes the epigenetic control. What am I doing to my body with the genes that I have? And it's actually affordable and saves money long term. I can't tell you how much money I've saved from not going to all these different procedures in the traditional system, getting on a bunch of medications. It's a very expensive process. So it's kind of like pay now or pay later. I don't want to wait to have all these disease and symptomatic issues in my body to start working on it. I want to prevent those or delay those as long as I can. So our goal is always to find what's out of balance. You may have some normal measurements in your body. You may have some optimal measurements. You may have some things that are high and low. The goal is no matter where you are on each of those measurements is to constantly strive to keep pushing these up and up and up and not treat symptoms. That's not a good model, in my opinion, because, an opioid or ibuprofen is much cheaper than eating healthy and exercising. It takes time and effort to do those things, but it makes a world of difference with how you live your life. You are present with your family. I can enjoy my hobbies because I don't have any limitations. So the goal is always to find these weak areas and keep pushing them into these optimal directions throughout your whole life, really. So most people focus on symptoms. They feel good. They go to that yearly blood work that they get. You're normal, but I still don't feel good. It's like, well, how is everything normal every year, but I just don't feel good? I have digestive issues or whatever's happening. So I don't want to wait for symptoms to start fixing this stuff. I definitely don't want to wait for a disease to try to start fixing this stuff. I want to prevent a disease and delay that disease from ever occurring. Typically, people have symptoms, which leads to a disease, which leads to death. So we want to go in the more optimal range with this process though. So benefit two is comparing you to optimal ranges, not normal ranges that are really big and broad that aren't specific with optimal amounts for your body. The average, again, is a generally unhealthy population. The normal ranges on your lab report are based on averages of sick people, a sick population, people on medications, people with chronic disease, chronic inflammation. So when your results come back normal every year, it just means you're statistically average in a very sick population. The US ranks as one of the worst countries of health, ironically. So we don't want to wait for our check engine light to pop up. My cholesterol's high one day, my blood sugar's high, or I start getting chronic migraines. We want to fix these things as they're silently developing, not waiting for that check engine light to come on finally. And here's what medications do, unfortunately. When that check engine light comes on, most people, they just get a little piece of black electrical tape and they put it over this light in our car, right? It's like, I don't see the problem anymore. It's not there. That's just not true. So if I take pain relievers or any other medication, you're suppressing or masking the symptoms, right? As the problem and the root cause gets silently worse over time. Right. So again, this optimization and proactive approach is just so much better. So adverse drug reactions are the third leading cause of death. This is why this isn't a good option for me unless I absolutely need them. I use this system really as a crisis model. If I break my femur tomorrow, I might want some morphine for a couple days, right? But drugs never address the root cause. And in fact, they're the third leading cause of death, unfortunately, in the US, and only about 1% of serious drug reactions are even reported. So we want to look at root causes. So diseases such as diabetes, cancer, heart disease, obesity, autoimmune conditions, fibromyalgia, arthritis, these all start years before the diagnosis or my lab starts showing up on this very small amount of labs that I do once a year. The root causes are immune imbalances, structural imbalances, inflammatory imbalances, hormonal imbalances, toxic chemical exposures, digestive imbalances, and mitochondrial dysfunction. These are those silent things that really have to do with your environment, your lifestyle, what we eat, how we think, how we move. This is kind of crazy. I don't think we're really doing things right in the US as a mainstream or traditionally. This is the first time in history they say that our kids will not outlive us as parents. Right? Think about that. Our lifespan is now getting worse. So if we do what everybody else is doing around us, we're going to become this statistic because this is a fact now. Our children will not outlive us as their parents. So we need to really step out of that mainstream thinking if we want to beat these statistics. So, how early does disease start in our body? Again, it's silent for years or decades. Heart disease has been shown to start in our youth, even 20 to 40 years before the diagnosis. So, I want to start working on it now, not when I have all these traditional labs out of balance. Cancer has been shown to start 15 to 20 years before your diagnosis. Alzheimer's has been shown to start 30 to 50 years before the diagnosis. And diabetes can start in the form of diabetes. There's also metabolic syndrome, which most people are in. So this is when we want to get involved in these first 5, 10, 20 years of dysfunction that you really have to run the right tests and compare to optimal ranges to really work on these and be proactive with it. So here's an example of the labs that we would do. This is page 1. This is page 2. So you can see it's a lot more comprehensive than traditional yearly blood work most people are used to. Now, the cool thing with this system that we have too, the science-based nutrition model, is if you look over here, you'll see that there's a clinical range. What we want to compare it to is optimal ranges. So let's say this is a 50 to 100. Optimal might be 75 to 90. So this is the goal, not normal, but actually optimal. So each of these lab measurements, I'm constantly striving to push them into optimal ranges because you may be in normal range. It may not be high or low yet, but you're in normal, but you're not optimal, right? This is that proactive approach. We're constantly looking at what's not perfect in the body. How do we keep working on it to keep pushing it up in that pyramid that you saw earlier? Now, off to the right, this is the optimal range. This is based on a lot of studies, research. Inside of that normal range, there's again that optimal range. This is what we want to compare you to. Now, if you see these smiley faces, this is great because follow-up lab work with this system, it's really easy to look through to see if I'm improving or not. A happy face simply means you improved closer to optimal from the last time we did this. If we see a sad face there, it's gotten further from optimal. Again, not just normal, but that optimal range. So it's a great system. We're comparing you to optimal ranges. We're constantly striving for better and better with little tweaks throughout our diet and nutrition so that we can constantly try to push these ranges to optimal versus waiting that 10 to 20 years for those silent changes to finally lead to a bigger issue. So it's an incredible system. It's overall more comprehensive than our traditional labs that we get every year. Plus, we're going to compare you to optimal. Plus, it's going to give us an easy way to track this every 6 to 12 months to make sure we're on track or we need to change things because we're slipping the other direction. So this is the chart I showed you earlier. We had symptoms, disease, and death. Really what we want to spend our time and effort on money in is the dis-ease process. So if you're in normal range, but not optimal, that's what we call dis-ease, not at ease. You don't have a symptom or maybe a disease yet, but it's shifting out of where you should be. So all of those markers, I think there's around 60 markers that we do. Some of your measurements are normal, but we want to push them into an optimal range. So all of those measurements, it's kind of a delicate dance of trying to push each one, up and up and up over time as we go through life and have stress and all these other things. So it's a much better mindset. It's proactive. And benefit 3 is addressing root cause allows progress without the side effects, right? Because by the time I have high cholesterol and they want to put me on a cholesterol drug, there are going to be side effects with that. If you're on insulin or if I'm on metformin or I'm on an opioid, right, and I'm addressing symptoms only and not the root cause, those will have side effects. All medications come with side effects, unfortunately. So when you're proactive and we compare it to optimal and keep shooting for optimal through lifestyle changes, just a much better way to go through life. So we can walk you through and even have our mobile phlebotomist come out to you to do that blood draw, or we can send you to LabCorp. But it's a whole system that is contained in the software that allows us to compare you to optimal and really be proactive with your health versus reactive. Let me know if you have any questions.